Good morning.
Good morning.
My name's Matt. What's your name? Teachers, would it be easier to have them sit? Would they be less squirrely that way?
Yeah.
Less squirrely anyway? How many of you are squirrels? Lots of you. Who knows why we're here today? All right, we're going to raise your hand, okay? There's lots of you. What's that? To plant a tree. So every year, the city plants a tree that's just for each class. So this tree will be your class tree all the way until you graduate from high school, which will be in about 4 days, right? No? Okay. So this tree will grow with your class, grow with you, and you'll get to come back when you're seniors in high school and see just how big this tree gets. And we'll see just how big you all got. So does anybody want to guess what kind of tree it is?
Apple tree.
Raise your hand.
Like a tree with no leaves? No, it won't grow apples. It's just starting to grow the leaves. It's still, some trees take longer in the spring to grow their leaves than others, but these are the leaves. It's just starting. Anybody else want to guess what kind of tree it is?
Isaac, I'm sorry. Thank you.
He wants to know if it'll turn into a tree with those pink flowers. That's actually pretty close. So this kind of tree has a couple different names. You can call it a yellow poplar, or you can call it a tulip poplar. I like to call it a tulip tree. So a tulip tree is actually a kind of magnolia tree. And those bushes up there with the pink flowers are also magnolia bushes. So it will hit the flowers on this won't be pink, they'll actually be yellow and orange, but they will be about that big. So it will get big magnolia flowers on it. And this is the tree in the magnolia family that lives the farthest north. It can deal with cold weather a lot better. Most of the magnolia trees are really warm weather. So, does anybody know what holiday we're celebrating? Arbor Day. Does anybody know what Arbor Day means? Planting a tree, that's what we do on Arbor Day. Yeah, that's something that trees do. We'll talk about that in a minute. So Arbor Day, arbor means tree. So Arbor Day is pretty much just tree day. So that's why we plant a tree, and that's why we talk about trees on Arbor Day. And you guys get to do lots of other fun stuff today too. But Arbor Day is about trees and all the good things that they can do for us. So who knows a good thing that trees do for us? Right there. They help us breathe. How do they help us breathe?
Make clean air.
They do make clean air. So the leaves on the trees take the carbon dioxide in the air that we breathe, and they turn it into oxygen and so that we can breathe it in, and all the other animals can breathe it in. So they do help to clean the air, and while they do that, they filter it to where it's better air for us to breathe. What's another good thing that trees do for us?
Make us have paper.
Just a minute. Go ahead.
Grow fruit.
They do grow food. There's lots of different kinds of food that grows on trees. What's a kind of food that grows on a tree?
Apple.
Raise your hand. If orange grows on trees, how many of you like oranges? All right, what's another food that grows on trees? Apples grow on trees. Who likes apples? What's another kind of food that grows on trees? Fruit that's good for your body? Plants, yeah. What's another kind of food that grows on trees? Grapes don't grow on trees, they grow on vines. Who likes pears? Who likes grapefruits? Who likes avocados? Does anybody like cashews or walnuts or different kind of nuts? All of those grow on trees. Do you all like popsicles? Do popsicles grow on trees? What about popsicle sticks? Popsicle sticks are wood, so we make the popsicle sticks from trees. What are some other types of things that we can make from trees?
Paper.
We make paper out of trees.
Wood airplane.
Wooden airplanes we can make from trees.
Firewood.
Firewood comes from trees.
Olivia, get that.
Something that you
Hey, girl.
Something you draw on the paper, yeah. So one thing we didn't talk about when we were talking about the good things that trees do, we talked about how they clean the air for us. We talked about how they help us with food, and there's lots of different things we can make from trees. What kind of animals live in trees or use trees for their homes?
birds and squirrels.
Birds and squirrels live in trees and use trees.
Owls.
Owls use trees. Raccoons live in trees.
I hate raccoons.
Owls live in trees. Did you know some owls live on the ground too? Come back to you. Eagles make their nests in trees. Lots of birds make their nests in trees. Squirrels live in trees. Sometimes mice live in trees. Lots and lots and lots of bugs live in trees. Even bears in Missouri sometimes live in trees. They'll hibernate in a big hollow tree or underneath a big fallen log. So even bears live in trees. There's some people that live in trees. Do any of you have a tree house? So you live in trees, right? No? Okay, so who has a question about trees?
Story, a question.
They do give us lots of fruit. What's your question?
Telling us question words, guys. You've heard your question words.
All right, you think for a minute, I'll come back to you. What's your question? Does trees grow from apples into paper? So a tree can grow from the seed inside an apple, and you could make paper from that tree. So yes, it could happen, but I don't think any of the paper you use is probably made from apple trees. It's made from different kinds of trees. What's your question? They do grow coconuts. They do grow peaches. What's your question? How do they make the food on the tree? So the food on the tree, the fruits, like the peaches, the oranges, the apples, the pears, those are all the fruit. So that's actually protecting the seed. So the seeds that are inside of all of those are actually the seed that you could plant and grow a new tree. So the fruit that we eat on those is the protection for that seed. And when that fruit falls on the ground, if we didn't eat it, that fruit would turn into fertilizer to help the seed grow. For the nuts that we eat, that's actually the seed itself. So we're eating the seed when we eat the nuts. What's your question?
How many years
Xander, I need you back up.
will a
Back on the sidewalk. Everybody get back on the sidewalk. Back
For an oak tree to get what? An adult?
All kids.
How long does it take for a tree to turn into an adult?
Second.
So that depends on which kind of tree it is. So oak trees, I would call it an adult when they start making acorns. And for oak trees, that's usually between 20 and 40, sometimes 50 years. For some other trees, for chestnuts, it might only be 3 years. For some trees, it might be 60 years. It just depends on what kind of tree. What's your question? How do you cut down a tree to make the paper? So when they cut it down, they either use a giant machine that cuts it down for them, or you can use a chainsaw and you can cut it down. And the way they make the paper, basically, they cut the wood into little pieces, and they put it in a giant pot, and they boil it a whole bunch, and they beat it all up to where the wood turns into tiny little pieces, tiny little fibers, and then they put that on a big screen to where it's nice and flat, and they soak it and let it dry, and it turns into paper. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it, but that's pretty much how it happens. What's your question?
monkeys?
Monkeys do live in trees. Lemons can be in trees. Monkeys can climb trees. Do you remember your question? No? What's your question?
Oh, yeah. This road.
All right, so who knows some good things that we can do to help trees? Anything?
Eat it.
You can feed it. Fertilizer can help it.
You can make almonds.
Yeah.
Give it water.
Give it water. One of the things that I like to do is give trees mulch. Do you see, if you look down at any of these other trees, do you see the ring of mulch around it? And that's what Clay and Neil have in the back of this gator is some mulch. So the reason we put mulch down, especially on a brand new tree, and these are the guys that planted your tree yesterday, so I always say thank you real loud. So when you put mulch down around the tree like this, it's especially important for a brand new tree that just got planted. You put it on there and it helps keep the soil from drying out. So it helps the roots that are just planted stay moist, and it helps them to be able to grow really well. And it keeps the sun from making the soil too hot, and the mulch helps the tree a lot. That's one of the most important things you can do for a brand new tree is to put some mulch around it. And one of the other things that the mulch helps do, it helps to keep the lawnmowers from running into it. So when these guys mow the lawn, they don't have to try to get right up close to the tree to where they might scrape the bark. Because the bark on a tree is just like the skin on your body. If it gets cut, it can heal, but it takes a while and it hurts the tree just a little bit. So the mulch that they're doing is one of the most important things that you can do for a tree. Does anybody, let's take a couple more tree questions and then we'll get a picture with your tree. What's your tree question? Yep.
What happens? You're like moving in the yard and then there's like a crack in the tree. What would you do with the tree?
What would you do with the tree if there's a crack in the tree? Well, that just depends how bad the crack is. A lot of trees, they can have a big section of the tree that's actually dead wood that might be hollow, it might be completely hollow with a big hole in the middle, and the tree will be just fine. So most of the time you don't have to do anything with the crack in the tree. If it's to where the tree's about to fall over, you might have to cut it down so it doesn't fall on your house or on your car or something like that. All right, one more question. Right there. What would happen if there was no trees on Earth? Well, one, you wouldn't have anything to climb. We wouldn't have any shade. We wouldn't have nearly as much oxygen. It wouldn't be very good for us if we didn't have any trees. Our world would be very, very different if we didn't have trees, wouldn't it? All right, so we're going to take a picture with your tree. Teachers, if you would, bring classes around just to this side of this tree. So even though you might not have known it, we planted this tree for your class. So this is going to be your class tree all the way until you're out of high school and even longer. So you'll get to see how this tree grows and how much you grow. Do you think you'll grow faster or the tree will grow faster? Who thinks the tree's going to grow faster? Who thinks you're going to grow faster? I think you're probably going to grow faster. This kind of tree is a pretty slow growing tree. Does anybody remember what kind of tree it is? Oh, raise your hand. It's not a pine tree. It's not an oak. It's not an apple tree. Or it is an oak. Yes. It's not a pine cone tree. It is an oak. I said that wrong. It is an oak. Who knows what kind of oak it is? A red oak? It's not a red oak. A dark oak? No. Brown oak? It's called a bur oak. A bur oak. And this kind of tree is one of the longest living trees that we have in Missouri. If it has good soil conditions, it can live for 300 or sometimes 400 years. That's even older than your moms and dads. Can you believe it? So, write down. Who can tell me some good things that trees do for us? They give us air. Yep. Yeah, it's the oxygen that they give us that we breathe out of the air. We make wood from trees to build lots of stuff. We get food from trees. What kind of food do we get from trees? Apples. Raise your hand. Trees give us paper. What kind of trees? Finley, what kind of trees? What kind of food do we get from trees? Pears. Who likes apples? Who likes pears? Who likes peaches? What about walnuts? Anybody like walnuts? I bet some of your teachers do. Does anybody like cashews? I really like cashews. All of these are foods that come from trees. So those are all foods that we eat. There's lots and lots of other animals that use trees for food. What other kind of animals use trees for food? Owls live in, owls don't eat anything from trees, but they do live in trees. What kind of animals? Monkeys eat bananas that come from trees? Yep. I'll come back for, oh, you said giraffes? Giraffes eat trees? Elephants eat trees? Squirrels eat the acorns that grow on trees? Beavers eat the bark around trees, and they cut down trees to make their houses. So other kinds of animals that eat trees, there's even ants eat trees. Lots and lots of birds eat trees. Lots of stuff eats trees. So what are some other good things that trees do for us? Anything else? We talked about a bunch. One of the, make houses out of the wood. One of the best things that you might not even think about is big trees that are right next to your house, right next to your moms or dads, or grandmas and grandpas and aunts and uncles, the big trees that are next to their house, that helps put shade on their house, so that actually makes it to where they can save money. So it doesn't cost as much to heat the house in the winter. It doesn't cost as much to heat the house in the summer. Trees help to slow down when it rains really hard. Trees help to slow down all the rainwater so we don't have as many floods. The tree roots in the ground help to loosen the soil so other plants can grow, so the soil is healthy. There's lots of things that you might not even think about that trees help us. There's lots of things. So what other, we talked about a few animals that eat trees. What kind of animals live in trees? Birds live in trees? Squirrels, Annabelle? Koalas? Owls? Did you take yours? Lizards can live in trees? Monkeys live in trees? Snakes can live in trees? Lots and lots of different kinds of animals. What do you think? Do elephants live in trees? No! Do any of you have a tree house at home? Yeah. So do people live in trees sometimes? Yeah, even bears sometimes live in trees. Bears will, hey, quiet down. Bears will hibernate in trees. Big hollow trees, the bears will sometimes hibernate in trees. Or even after the tree falls down, even more plants and animals start to live in trees. In different parts of the country, that's about the only way that a new tree can start to grow is when one tree falls over, because the soil just isn't very good. New trees grow off of the old tree. They actually start growing on the old tree. That's called a seed tree or a nursery tree. So the trees, even after they die, they turn into really good soil, and they help other plants even after the trees die. And even more animals and plants live in the trees and use the trees after they die. Lots of insects will come in. Lots of mushrooms will start to grow. The woodpeckers start to come to eat the insects. There's lots and lots of things that trees do for us. So what are some good things that we can do to help trees? Kimber? You can water them if it gets really dry. You can plant them. That's one of the best things you can do is plant more trees. Yep.
Give them soil and
Give them soil and joy. Yeah, trees like to be happy. All right, I'll come back to you. Trees do give us paper. That's one of the things we make from them.
trees
to help cut off some of the dead branches so they don't break, or so that you can get them higher so that you can mow underneath of them easier. That's a good thing to do. One of the best things that you can do, does everybody see the mulch around the tree, or if you can turn around and see the big piles of mulch around the trees behind you? Especially with the new tree that you plant, putting mulch around the tree is one of the most important things you can do. That helps to keep the soil moist so that the roots can grow really well, and it helps to protect the tree so that when somebody's mowing around it, they don't have to try to mow really close to it so they don't scrape the side of the tree. Because the bark on a tree is just like the skin on your body. If it gets cut, it can heal, but it sometimes takes a while, and it does hurt the tree just a little bit. So who has a question about trees?
Why do most people cut down where some furry animals live?
Why do sometimes we cut down trees where animals live? So I don't know that there's any tree that doesn't have some kind of animal living in it. So it's going to be tough to cut down a tree that doesn't have animals in it. People usually try not to cut down the trees that have a big bird's nest or a squirrel nest or something like that. But sometimes we have to cut down the trees to be able to use them. What's your question?
Why do people cut down trees?
Why do people cut down trees? Because trees make oxygen. So the reason that we cut down trees, one reason might be if it's a dangerous tree, so it doesn't fall on your house or fall on your car. Another reason, if we want to make the wood or make the paper, we have to cut down the tree to be able to. Yeah. Do people cut down thorn trees? So there's a kind of tree in Missouri, it's called a honey locust, and it can have huge thorns. And yeah, some people do cut those down. If they grow in fields, they'll pop farmers' tires. So some people do cut those down so that they don't pop all the tires. Yeah. Why do the leaves fall off in the fall, and why do they grow back in the spring? So the leaves are how the tree makes its food. And the trees, does anybody know what the kind of tree is called that drops all its leaves? There's two different kinds of trees. There's one that keeps its leaves all winter, and there's one that drops its leaves in the winter. Bentley, do you know what it's called? You can't remember it? Does anybody know what it's called? No, oaks do that. You know what it's called for trees that drop their leaves in the winter? An evergreen tree is the ones that keep their leaves all winter. So the trees that drop their leaves are called deciduous trees. And the reason that they drop them, because usually it's trees that live in parts of the country or parts of the world farther north. The days aren't as long in the winter. It's really cold, and the leaves are really soft. So the soft leaves, if it gets too cold for them, the leaf will die and it can't make the food for the tree. So the tree, it basically is kind of like the bear hibernates all winter. The tree hibernates all winter. We call it goes dormant for the winter. It doesn't really grow, it doesn't really do anything. It just sits there and waits for it to get warm again in the spring. And then it grows its new leaves in the spring so that with these nice, long, sunny, hot days, it can catch all that sunlight and make some new food. What's your question? Which part of the tree do we use to make paper? The wood or the leaves? We use the wood. The balls that have spikes on them. So that kind of tree is called a sweet gum tree. And that's the fruit that's on the tree. That's just how they look. There's other kinds of trees, like chestnut trees, American chestnut or chinkapin chestnut. It's almost like they have needles on there instead of those little spikes. So each different tree, the different fruits are all just a little bit different. And that's just how they are for the fruit on the sweet gum tree. Yeah. Why do trees sometimes fall down? Trees are just like everything else. They at some point they'll get old enough and they'll die. So the roots underneath, if the tree's dead, it'll start to rot and it'll eventually fall down. or even live trees sometimes fall down if the roots start to rot, if they have a disease, or if they get cut or damaged somehow. Basically, the roots underground are what holds the tree upright, and if those rot or those break, then the tree will fall down. How big do trees usually grow? So the bur oak tree is going to be one of the biggest trees that we have in Missouri. So the biggest bur oak in Missouri is, does everybody see these poles on this shelter right here? Imagine if a tree was as wide and spread all the way between two of those poles. That's about how big the biggest bur oak is in Missouri. It's a huge tree. You know what they call that tree? The big tree. Pretty good name for a big tree, huh? If you ever make it down by Columbia, the tree's right down by McBain. You can drive up and you can go give it a big hug. But bur oak trees, it can get about 100 feet tall. So that maple back there is about 60 feet tall. So bur oaks can grow another 40 feet taller than that tree. And they can spread out almost 150 feet. So they, a really big one of these could spread out almost from here all the way to the pool when it gets as big as they can. They can turn into really big trees. And they can have limbs that look like a tree all by themselves. Yeah.
We're gonna have the biggest tree ever.
How do trees start when they grow? So they start with the acorn. And when that acorn falls on the ground, it gets the moisture from the soil and it actually starts growing. It grows a root down and it grows a tree growing up. So it just starts from a seed and grows right into a tree and just keeps growing and keeps growing. How are we doing on time? Anybody got a clock? 10:15. 10:15. All right, what's your question? Yep. If you climb a tree, does it hurt a tree? No, it usually doesn't. The only thing we want to try to do or not do when you climb a tree is to break a bunch of branches off, because that will hurt the tree some. But if you just climb a tree, no, it doesn't hurt the tree at all. Do I work with trees? I guess I forgot to say that. Yes, my job, I'm a forester and an arborist. So yes, I work with trees all day. So we talked about Arbor Day and what arbor means. So if arbor means trees and this is tree day, and I'm an arborist, what does that mean that I do? I'm a treeist, that's right. So I do work with trees for my job. Yep. How do leaves get on the tree? The tree, it has little buds, and when it gets warm enough, those buds start to grow and it just grows leaves right out of them. Palm trees help us. So palm trees grow in certain parts of the country. They grow in tropical climates. So we won't be able to grow palm trees here, but palm trees are good trees where they do grow. And the crazy thing about palm trees is they're actually really similar to a grass. They're actually more similar to a grass in their cell structure than they are to a tree. So that's a really big grass. Yep. If you plant one tree next to another tree, will it grow? Usually, yes, it will. It depends on what kind of tree it is. Some trees grow best when they have lots of sunlight. Some trees grow best when they have more shade. So it depends on the kind of tree and other stuff. But most of the time, yeah, one tree can grow right next to another. Yep. How old can trees get? Some trees only live about 70 or 80 years. Some trees only live about 50 years. Some trees, the oldest trees we have in Missouri, and the bur oak is one of them, can live up to about 400 years. And the oldest trees in the world is the bristlecone pine tree out in California. It can live for a few thousand years. Hang on. Sit down. Talk loud. How do you know if the soil is bad? Sometimes you can't always tell that. You might actually have to send it off to a special lab and they can test it and see what it needs, if it needs fertilizer or what all is in it. How do trees give us oxygen? So that's something you'll talk about when you get a little older in science class. But basically, inside the leaves, there's tiny little cells, so small that you can't see them. And they soak in the carbon dioxide that we breathe out, and it's all around us in the air. They soak that in. and they inside the cells, inside the chloroplasts, they change that into oxygen. They use that for food to help give them energy. And just like we breathe in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide, they breathe in carbon dioxide and breathe out oxygen. So if we weren't here to breathe out carbon dioxide, the trees wouldn't have stuff to breathe. And if they weren't here to breathe out the oxygen, we wouldn't have stuff to breathe. So there's several things that it could have been. It probably wasn't a tree. It was probably either a greenbrier vine or a multifloral rose vine or a blackberry vine. One of those three. And it would depend on what the thorns look like. And it was probably a greenbrier. Did they look like lots of little black hairs? You don't think so? Well, it was one of those. The stuff with thorns is no fun. Yeah, what's your question?
I got ball.
You did. That is some bark. Casey, what do you got? What was the first tree planted? I have no idea. That's not a question. Good question. Yep. How do wildfires get started? So in different parts of the country, when you hear about the big wildfires, that's usually in the western part of the country. It gets really dry, and there's lots of pines and has lots of sap that burns really well. So it's really easy for any little spark, anything can start a wildfire. In Missouri, the conditions aren't the same. We don't have nearly as bad of wildfires. So if a wildfire gets started in Missouri, it's usually because somebody was burning a brush pile or burning a field and the fire got away from them, or somebody threw a cigarette or threw a match down and started a fire by accident, or sometimes even on purpose. So different parts of the country have different problems with wildfires. All right, last question. Yep.
How do you know that if it has some cookies in it? What if you accidentally cut some cookies in it?
What if you accidentally cut a tree with some pokies, with some thorns on it? So I actually have a piece of thorn stuck in my hand right there that I've got stuck with. So if you just cut the thorns off of it, sometimes they'll regrow. If they stab into you, that kind of tree, the honey locust, actually has a little poison on the tip, and that's what makes it hurt so bad. So try not to get stabbed with the thorns. All right.
I think everyone just getting in front of this little house right here will work, and then they can identify exactly where the tree's at. Yeah,
Between the tree and the...
yeah.
All right. Teachers, if you would, organize...